The wagon rattled over the stone road, and Leora Danvers held her knees close to her chest, trying not to cry in front of the other servants. She was 23 years old, and until last week, she had never imagined her life would end up like this. Her father's business had failed. The debts had grown too large. And so, like an old piece of furniture nobody wanted anymore, she had been sold to pay what the family owed. She was going to serve in the castle of the Alpha King, a man the whole kingdom feared and whispered about. His name was Chaol Ashbourne, ruler of the Northern Pack, a werewolf so powerful that even other alphas lowered their eyes when he passed. People said he had not smiled once in 5 years, not since his mate disappeared and was presumed dead. Some said he had become cruel because of his grief. Others said he had simply stopped feeling anything at all. Leora did not know why any of this mattered to her. She was not from a wolf family. She was human, ordinary, forgettable. She only wanted to survive whatever came next. When the wagon reached the castle gates, a stern woman with gray hair gathered the new servants and gave them numbers instead of names. Leora became servant 12. She was given a plain gray dress, a small room near the kitchens, and a long list of chores. She told herself it could be worse. At least there was food, a roof, and no one asking questions about a past she could not fully remember anyway. That was the strange part. Leora's memories only reached back 5 years. Before that, there was nothing but fog. The healers who once examined her, back when her family still had money for such things, said a fever had burned away parts of her mind when she was 18. She had learned to live without wondering too hard about what she had lost. Grief for something you cannot picture is a strange, quiet kind of pain. On her 3rd night in the castle, an older servant nudged her awake before dawn. "You, 12. The king wants wine brought to his study. Now, don't spill it, and don't look at him too long." Leora's hands trembled as she carried the tray down the long stone corridor. She had heard the whispers about Chaol Ashbourne's temper, about servants who disappeared from his service without explanation. She told herself it was nothing. He probably would not even glance at her. She knocked once, heard a low voice tell her to enter, and stepped inside. The study was dim, lit by a single fire in the hearth. Chaol Ashbourne stood by the window, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair falling across his forehead. When he turned to look at her, something happened that made Leora freeze in place. His eyes changed. For just a moment, they flashed a deep amber, almost gold, like an animal's eyes catching firelight. He took a sharp breath, as if he had been struck in the chest. The wineglass on her tray shook, and she nearly dropped the whole thing. "Your Majesty," she whispered, bowing her head quickly, the way she had been taught. "I brought your wine." He did not answer right away. He stared at her, as if she were a ghost standing in his study, as if the air itself had gone still around them. Leora felt her skin prickle, though she could not explain why. There was something about his gaze that felt less like a stranger's, and more like someone remembering an old, familiar song. "Your name," he said finally, his voice rough. "Servant 12, Your Majesty." His jaw tightened. "Your real name." "Leora," she said softly. "Leora Danvers." Something flickered across his face, pain and hope tangled together. He stepped closer, and Leora had to stop herself from stepping back. Up close, he smelled faintly of pine and rain, and strangely, that scent felt like something she already knew, though she was certain they had never met. "Set the tray down," he said, "and do not leave the castle grounds." "That is an order." Leora obeyed, confused and unsettled, and hurried out of the room as soon as she was allowed. She spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling of her small room, wondering why the king's eyes had looked at her as though she were something precious he had lost long ago. She did not know that down in his study, Chaol Ashbourne had fallen into a chair and pressed both hands over his face, his wolf howling inside him with a joy so violent it felt like grief. The next morning, Chaol summoned his beta, a broad, serious man named Rurik, and an old healer named Mother Sable, who had served the Ashbourne family for decades. He told them what happened, his voice shaking in a way neither of them had heard in 5 years. Mother Sable's eyes went wide. She left the room without a word and returned minutes later, carrying an old wooden box. Inside was a faded portrait, painted 5 years earlier, of a young woman with soft brown eyes and a birthmark near her collarbone shaped like a small crescent moon. Rurik went pale. "That is Servant 12. Cale's hands trembled as he touched the edge of the portrait. "That is Leora Wren," he said. "My mate." 5 years ago, before she vanished, Leora Wren had been the daughter of a respected healer within the pack. She and Cale had bonded in secret, young and deeply in love, planning to announce their union publicly once the political tensions with a rival pack, the Draven clan, had settled. But before they could, a raid struck the border villages. Leora had gone missing in the chaos, and days later, her torn cloak was found near a ravine, soaked in blood. Everyone believed she had died protecting fleeing villagers. Cale had mourned her every day since, refusing every attempt by his advisors to find him a new mate. Now she was standing in his castle, wearing a servant's dress, with no memory of any of it. "She does not know me," Cale said quietly. "She does not know herself." Mother Sable studied the portrait, then looked toward the door, as though she could see through the stone walls to where Leora slept. If her mind was damaged, there may be a binding upon her, something dark used to erase what happened. It happens sometimes. When someone survives an attack no one was meant to survive. Perhaps someone silenced her memory so she could never speak of what she witnessed that night. Cale's fists clenched. If Leora had lived, if she had been taken instead of killed, then someone had let the kingdom believe a lie for 5 long years. Someone had sold his mate from house to house like a piece of property, while he grieved an empty grave. "I will not force the bond onto her," Cale said firmly, though his wolf screamed in protest beneath his skin. "She has no memory of loving me. I will not take advantage of that. She must choose me again, freely, or not at all." From that day forward, Leora noticed changes. She was moved from the kitchens to a small chamber near the king's private wing. She was given new dresses, simple, but finer than servants' clothes. Cale visited her in the evenings, not as a king giving orders, but almost like a man trying, carefully, to become her friend. At first, Leora was frightened. Kings did not spend their evenings speaking gently with servants, but as the weeks passed, she found herself waiting for those visits. Cale would ask about her day, listen when she spoke, and sometimes simply sit with her in comfortable silence by the fire. He never touched her without asking. He never rushed her. And slowly, without fully understanding why, Leora began to feel something warm unfolding inside her chest whenever he was near. Strange things started happening too. She would catch a glimpse of the castle gardens and feel a rush of familiarity, as if she had walked those paths 100 times before. She would hear Cale's voice in the hallway and feel her heart lift before she even saw his face. One night, she dreamed of standing on a cliff overlooking the sea, moonlight silver on the water, a man's hand holding hers as he whispered words she could not quite make out. She woke up crying, though she did not know why. "I think," she told Cale one evening, her voice trembling, "I think I have been here before. Not the castle. Somewhere like it. With you." Cale's throat tightened with emotion he tried to hide. "What do you remember?" "Nothing clear. Just feelings. Like pieces of a song I used to know." He wanted so badly to tell her everything, but Mother Sable had warned him that forcing broken memories too quickly could shatter her mind entirely. So he simply took her hand, gently, and said, "Whatever you remember, or don't remember, I am not going anywhere." For the first time in 5 years, Cale Ashbourne felt something close to peace. That peace did not last long. Word had reached the Draven clan that a servant matching Leora Wren's description was living inside the Ashbourne castle. If she regained her memory and told Cale the truth, that Draven warriors had staged the attack 5 years ago and sold her into slavery to hide their crime and avoid a war they could not win, it would mean their destruction. The Draven Alpha made a cold decision. Leora had to disappear again, permanently this time. 3 nights later, shadows moved through the castle gardens. Trained assassins slipped past the outer guards, moving silently toward the private wing where Leora slept. But Cale's wolf, restless since the moment he found her, had refused to settle that night. He had stationed him just outside her door, unable to sleep, some instinct screaming at him to stay close. When the first assassin appeared at the end of the hallway, Cale's wolf senses caught the danger instantly. He let out a roar that shook the stone walls and threw himself between the intruder and Leora's door. The fight that followed was brutal and fast. Rurik and the castle guards arrived within moments, cutting off any escape. Leora woke to the sound of shouting and crashing outside her room, and before she could think clearly, she threw open her door to see Chaol locked in combat with a masked attacker, blood on his arm, fury burning in his amber eyes. "Leora, stay back," he shouted. But in that instant, seeing him fight to protect her, something inside Leora's mind cracked open completely. The binding spell that had silenced her memory for 5 years shattered like glass. Images flooded her all at once, her wedding vow whispered under moonlight, Chaol's laughter echoing through summer fields, the terror of the Draven raid, the pain of being taken, the years of being sold from house to house, always feeling like something was missing, never understanding what. She remembered everything. She remembered him. "Chaol," she screamed, and the sound of his true name on her lips, spoken with recognition instead of confusion, struck him harder than any blow from the assassin. With his mate's memory restored, and his heart finally whole again, Chaol's strength surged. He ended the fight swiftly, and the remaining attackers were captured, or driven off by the guards. When it was over, he turned to find Leora standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed to her mouth. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember everything, Chaol. I remember us." He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, as though he would never let her go again. She buried her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, a sound she had not realized she had been missing for 5 long years. "I thought I lost you," Chaol said, his voice breaking. "I thought I would spend my whole life without you." "I am here," Leora said. "I was always trying to find my way back to you. I just did not know it." In the days that followed, the truth about the Draven clan's betrayal was revealed to the entire kingdom. Justice was served, and the years of false peace between the 2 packs came to an end, replaced by a treaty built on honesty instead of secrets. But for Chaol and Leora, none of that mattered as much as the simple fact that they were together again. On a clear morning, the whole pack gathered in the castle courtyard to witness something they never thought they would see again, their king standing before them with light in his eyes. Chaol took Leora's hand in front of everyone and spoke words that echoed across the stone walls. "5 years ago, I lost my mate, and with her, I lost myself. Today, the fates have returned her to me, and I will never let her go again. This is Leora Wren Ashbourne, my true mate, and your queen." The courtyard erupted into cheers. Leora stood beside him, no longer a nameless servant, no longer a woman lost in fog, but exactly who she was always meant to be. That evening, they walked together to the cliffside where Leora had once dreamed of standing with him, moonlight silver on the water, just as she remembered. Chaol wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin gently on her shoulder. "Do you remember what I promised you here, 5 years ago?" he asked softly. Leora smiled, tears of joy in her eyes. "You promised that no matter what happened, you would always find your way back to me." "And I did," Chaol whispered. "We both did." Below them, the waves rolled gently against the cliffs, the same as they had 5 years before, as if the sea itself had been waiting patiently for their story to finally continue. Above them, the stars shone bright and steady, witnesses to a love that had survived loss, silence, and years of darkness, only to rise again, stronger and truer than before.